The #1 team in the nation knocked off. #5 Georgia comes into Austin and downs Texas 30-15. Michael Williams making a play. 3 fumbles in this game for Texas. 1 interception. 4 turnovers total for the Texas Longhorns, who were shut out in the first half. They had just 38 total yards. Quinn Ewers started this game, got benched. Arch Manning came in. Quinn Ewers came back in. Carson Beck threw 3 interceptions. Trevor Etienne had 3 touchdowns. It's the Bulldog defense that shuts down the Longhorns to give Texas its first loss of the season. #1 goes down again. CBS Sports HQ is built by the Home Depot. How doers get more done. Welcome in CBS Sports college football writers Richard Johnson and Shehan Jeyarajah. And Richard, look, the turning point in this game was the pass interference that was called and then nullified. What did you think of that moment? Fans are throwing trash on the field. Kirby Smart's losing his mind because it gave Texas life.
Yeah, look, similar to the end of game situation with Virginia Tech and Miami, it was right call, wrong process, which it's as simple as that. So yes, they got it right. It took them a while. They conferenced. Obviously, they had more time to conference because of the fans throwing whatever it was on the field there. I don't think that really mattered, but it did give them more time to end up making the right call. But Georgia, I think Georgia, true heart of a champion stuff, to take Texas's best shot, to weather the storm and come back with their own 11-play, 80-yard scoring drive to really put the game a little bit out of reach. They even had to score 3 times because 3 different reviews. We're sitting there in the green room watching this game thinking, how many times does Georgia really have to punch this ball in? I thought they scored 3 different times. So Georgia did what they had to do, and they did not have their best stuff on offense. Far from it. Kirby Smart, going into the locker room at halftime, made the very key point that we got to stop kicking field goals. Texas's defense, despite being down 23-0 at the break, Texas's defense was the reason it wasn't 41-0 at the break, and Texas defense stood firm in the first half. So Georgia being able to finally break through, finally get it done, finally put it out of reach at the end there. That's heart of a champion stuff.
Shehan, this was the difference. I know in terms of scoring, it wasn't the difference, but Texas had just scored off of that play being nullified and overturned, and then Georgia goes down and scores. That, to me, was the turning point, the difference in this game, because if Georgia doesn't score, the door remains wide open.
And here's the reality, is that Georgia in the first half only really scored on short fields. Their average depth of drive for a score in the first half was only 17.8 yards. It was fumbles, it was interceptions, it was a punt return. They needed to put together a truly dominant drive at the end of the game. And this is why Georgia's Georgia. They do it. 11 plays, 89 yards. Like Richard said, they had to get in multiple times, but on 4th down, they ultimately do get in. This is what Georgia does. This is heart of a champion type stuff. If they don't get that conversion on 4th down, it's 23-15. Texas gets the ball back. It's a 1-score game. They have an opportunity to drive down the field and tie the game. This is what Georgia does. These are the moments that they're built for, and you see this experience coming through. I think that that was a huge factor in this game as you look at Georgia, not just this year, but in previous years, having been in these moments. Earlier this year, being in this kind of game against Alabama and having a chance to potentially win the game, but giving up a late touchdown to Ryan Williams. You see the experience coming through. You see the battle-tested nature come through. And I think Texas will benefit for that reason from this game, but they didn't have it today.
Yeah, and you know what? For Texas, they lose by 15, the largest home loss by an AP #1 since 1982, when Dan Marino's Pitt Panthers lost by 15 at home against unranked Notre Dame. And Richard, we were talking about this. We don't see this all that often. Quinn Ewers started the game, gets benched, comes back in the game. What did you make of that?
I mean, I thought it was basically the same 6.5 dozen with the quarterback situation. Quinn Ewers was not playing well in the first half. I mean, make no bones about it. The interception was on Quinn Ewers. The fumble also was on Quinn Ewers. He didn't see the blitz, and it became a fumble. So, you know, he made mistakes in the first half, but then Arch doesn't really take it by the scruff of the neck when he comes in, given his opportunity. Yes, he's got the wheels, and he gives them the opportunity to extend plays by being able to run the ball, pull and scramble, but he missed a deep shot you know, and I know he's coming off the bench cold. It's a tough situation against one of the best defenses in college football, but you know, big-time players make big-time plays, and he didn't in that spot. So perhaps Arch was not ready for the moment. You know, I do sort of still think it's same 6.5 dozen with whoever you played, because you're in a tough spot with the Georgia defense that's just pinning its ears back and coming.
Well, and I think that you have to give a lot of credit to Steve Sarkisian for the way that he's managed this quarterback room. I think that maybe a lesser coach doesn't feel comfortable enough to make that kind of decision and make that kind of wrinkle. Not only to take Quinn Ewers out of the game, but also to put him back in, to give him a talking to at halftime, to get him ready for that second half. And look, obviously Arch Manning wasn't able to come and fix everything, because the real issues had to do with the way that Texas's offensive line could not block Georgia. But I do think that the fact that he made that change, it did pay off in the second half. I think that Quinn Ewers had a second to collect himself, to get his head back on straight. And you see in the second half, he throws for nearly 200 yards and 2 touchdowns and gives Texas a chance to come back and win that game. Again, it's a big decision, and nobody knows that bigger than Steve Sarkisian. I mean, the reality is every question he's been asked about for essentially 2 years has been about Arch Manning. So for him to have the confidence to do that and also take Arch Manning back out, I think that that's the sign of a really competent coach that's handled things right.
As for Georgia, Carson Beck throws 3 interceptions. And Richard, if I had told you before this game that Carson Beck would throw 3 picks and they would still win this game, what would you tell me?
I would tell you the defense won the day from Georgia. You know, Hakeem, I don't really know coming away from this game how much better Georgia actually is than Texas. I do think Georgia is better than Texas. Obviously, the result speaks for itself. And the eye test also speaks for itself. Georgia dominated them in the lines of scrimmage. And Georgia was able to win ugly. So in that respect, yes, the Dogs are better than the Horns. But are they 15 points better than the Horns, considering how choppy that first half was? And, you know, you gotta... I hold both those thoughts in my head at the same time, that, you know, you'd have liked to have seen more from Georgia in that first half.
Shehan, is Georgia the #1 team in the nation? Do they get it back? Did they leapfrog Oregon, who beat Purdue, shut them out on Friday?
It's a good question. I think that certainly there are going to be first place votes given to a number of different teams. I would certainly jump Georgia ahead of undefeated Penn State at this point. But Oregon has a really, really good case. They went and beat Ohio State in the last second game as well. And they don't have a loss on their record. Yes, of course, Georgia has played 2 of the best teams in the country in Alabama and Texas, so it's a little more forgivable. But I think that when you have a win like that, when you handled business the way that you did, Oregon most likely deserves to be the #1 team in the country come tomorrow.
Well, Shehan, my dear colleague, I must push back on you on the fact that Alabama is one of the best 2 teams in the country. Obviously, you know, that just doesn't square with me. But the other thing is, I have Oregon #1 just because Oregon has the best win in the country. Oregon's win over Ohio State, to me, is a bigger deal than this Georgia win over Texas.
Okay, that's fair enough. I mean, look, Oregon did make the NCAA change a rule. 12 men on the field loophole. So I guess, you know, they're #1 in your hearts. All right, time now for the Doers Playbook, built by the Home Depot, how doers get more done, breaking down how a team's game plan leads to their success. Richard, Georgia's defense was super critical to this win.
Yeah, you know, Texas comes in this game with an offensive line that I thought was a shoo-in, frankly, for the Joe Moore Award. I thought they were playing really well, especially the tackles on the outside. Kelvin Banks on the left tackle is going to be an NFL draft pick. He's a great player, but he ran into Michael Williams, and he ran into a Georgia defensive front that, look, Georgia through this mini dynasty has been great up front, elite up front, and they just keep rolling guys in. And, you know, I think they had their pride tested. I think they've had a lot of people say, well, it's not the Georgia defense we once knew, because Alabama was able to put up so many points on them a couple weeks ago, and Georgia locked in the last few weeks, changed the narrative, and came in this game and said, no, we're still the big dogs.
And I'll tell you what, this has been a defense that usually does not rely very much on pass rushers. They usually try to keep things in front of them, but they're not a big sack team. I think that they showed a new wrinkle in some ways with the way that Jalen Walker played, with the way that Mykel Williams played. Those two guys alone combined for 5 sacks against Texas and Quinn Ewers. And like you mentioned, I mean, Kelvin Banks is not just a potential first-round pick. He's potentially the first tackle off the board. And Cameron Williams, by the way, the other tackle, has been getting first-round pub as well. So this was as impressive a pass rush as I think we've seen this year. And Georgia, again, they were just ready for this moment. I think that the fact that they have this in their back pocket, it's not necessarily something I expected them coming into the year, but it changes a lot of ways. The way that you think about this Georgia defense and the way that they're able to attack teams.
You know how Oprah likes to say, you get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car. Every SEC team, you get a loss, and you get a loss, and you get a loss. This is the first time since 2007 that there is no undefeated SEC team at the end of October. It's chaos.
I've been saying it for months since this realignment came in. Congratulations, everybody schedule hard if you're in the SEC or the Big Ten. Your schedule's hard now.
Georgia's now won 51 straight games against teams not named Alabama as they take down the #1 team in the nation 30-15 over Texas. Shehan Richard here on CBS Sports HQ, built by the Home Depot. Thanks, man.